Elia's ward had crossed 3 spiral sectors, 2 customs quarantines, and 1 embarrassingly aggressive luggage scanner just to watch the Festival of 7 Moons from a safe distance. That was the plan. Watch. Taste strange food. Take a few harmless recordings. Return to Earth with stories dramatic enough to impress his sister and believable enough not to make his mother ask whether space tourism had damaged his brain. The festival city floated above the gas giant Orava like a jeweled island chained to clouds. Beneath its transparent streets, storms rolled in blue and violet circles, wide enough to swallow continents. Above, 7 artificial moons turned slowly around the station, each one projecting a different color across the crowds. Gold for music, green for trade, silver for remembrance. Red, according to Elia's guide chip, meant ceremonial passion, which sounded like something a sensible tourist should avoid. "I am only here to observe," he told the small translation drone hovering near his shoulder. The drone clicked. "You have said this 11 times. Good. Recorded officially." Around him moved beings from 100 worlds, glass-skinned merchants with voices like bells, armored pilgrims breathing vapor from silver masks, feathered scholars arguing over gravity poetry, and tall alien women who looked almost human, except for their long, elegant ears and eyes that caught the moonlight as if stars had been poured into them. Elias tried very hard not to stare. He failed with the discipline of a man pretending to inspect architecture. Music pulsed through the air, not from speakers but from floating crystal organs that rearranged themselves with every note. Food stalls hissed and glowed. One vendor offered him something that smiled back from a bowl. "No," Elias said politely, "I don't eat anything that looks emotionally aware." The vendor seemed offended. The bowl seemed relieved. He drifted with the crowd toward a wide ceremonial plaza where thousands had gathered around a circular platform of black stone. Above it spun a ring of pale fire. Elias stopped at the edge, delighted. This was exactly what he had come for. Ancient alien culture, safely observed from behind a line of locals who hopefully knew when to duck. Then someone stumbled beside him. A young alien woman in a blue festival robe caught herself against a pillar. She looked human enough that, for half a second, Elias forgot she was not, until her long ears trembled with embarrassment, and the silver lines along her temples shimmered faintly. A delicate ornament had fallen from her hands, a crescent-shaped piece of white metal glowing softly on the ground. People gasped. Elias noticed none of the warning signs because he was busy being helpful. "Here," he said, picking it up carefully. "You dropped this." The moment the ornament touched her palm, the plaza went silent. The spinning ring of fire above them burst into rose-colored light. Thousands of eyes turned toward Elias. Somewhere a drum began to beat by itself. The woman stared at him, her cheeks turning a luminous shade of pink. Elias smiled weakly. "Please tell me I didn't just break a religious moon spoon." The crowd erupted into cheers so loud the transparent street vibrated beneath his boots. Floating cameras swarmed toward him like metallic insects. The translation drone beside his head processed 300 overlapping voices, sparked once, and announced, "Congratulations." Elias slowly looked at it. "For what?" The drone paused, as if searching for the least terrifying answer. "For participating." The applause refused to die. It rolled across the floating city like a living tide, echoed by the transparent streets beneath Elias' boots and reflected by the 7 artificial moons circling overhead. Tiny drones projected ribbons of shimmering light into the air, weaving symbols he could not read but instinctively knew were meant to celebrate something. Unfortunately, he had no idea what. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Elias called, raising both hands. The translator drone hovered closer. Statement translated. The cheering became even louder. "What did you tell them?" "I translated your words faithfully." "What exactly did you say?" The honored participant humbly accepts the sacred misunderstanding. Elias closed his eyes. "That is not remotely faithful. It was culturally appropriate." Before he could argue, the young alien woman stepped toward him. Up close, she looked even more human than before, except for her long, elegant ears that twitched nervously with every heartbeat. Silver markings glowed softly beneath her skin like tiny rivers of light. Her blue eyes remained fixed on his face with equal parts embarrassment and disbelief. I am terribly sorry," she said in careful galactic standard. "You were only trying to help. Finally, someone understands." She shook her head slowly. "No, I understand why you did it. I do not think everyone else will." Several elderly figures wearing robes covered in floating golden glyphs approached through the crowd. Gravity seemed to bend around them, allowing them to glide instead of walk. Each carried a crystalline staff whose core contained miniature galaxies spinning in impossible patterns. The oldest stopped before Elias. "Outsider," he declared, "did you knowingly return the heart ornament with your own hands?" "I knowingly picked up something that fell," the elder smiled. "The intention of kindness satisfies the first condition." Elias blinked. "There are conditions. There are 7. Oh, that's significantly worse." Laughter spread through the spectators. Apparently even sacred officials appreciated panic when it was genuine. The young woman covered her mouth to hide a smile. The elder lifted his crystal staff. Instantly, holographic constellations bloomed above the plaza. Ancient figures appeared within the stars, repeating the exact motion Elias had performed only moments earlier. "When the chosen returns the heart ornament," the elder continued, "the bond is witnessed by all. I wasn't choosing anybody. The tradition states that sincerity cannot be rehearsed. I assure you, my confusion is completely sincere." Even the officials struggled not to laugh. Around them, hundreds of floating cameras continued broadcasting every expression across enormous holographic screens suspended above the festival. Elias caught sight of his own face. "I look like a man who's accidentally subscribed to something with no cancellation policy." The alien woman laughed outright this time, the sound warm enough to cut through the growing tension. "My name is Lyra," she said quietly. "Elias. I wish we had met under less ceremonial circumstances. I usually prefer introductions that don't involve several thousand witnesses." A sudden trumpet blast interrupted them. Dozens of ceremonial guards descended from the sky on silent anti-gravity platforms. Their polished armor reflected all 7 moons at once, while elegant energy spears rested across their shoulders. The crowd respectfully stepped aside. Elias leaned toward Lyra. "Please tell me they're here to congratulate us." She hesitated just long enough for him to regret asking. "They're here," she whispered, "to escort us." "To where?" "The Hall of Eternal Witnesses." "That sounds legally binding." Lyra looked at him with genuine sympathy. "It usually is." Elias stared toward the enormous palace rising above the festival, its crystal towers piercing the clouds like frozen lightning. He sighed. "I came here hoping to buy a souvenir." The translator drone beeped cheerfully. "You still can, if everything proceeds normally." It paused, after the partnership ceremony. Elias looked skyward. Somewhere beyond the artificial moons, the stars seemed to be laughing with everyone else. The Hall of Eternal Witnesses was not a hall in the human sense. Elias had expected walls, doors, perhaps a stern desk where someone would explain how to undo whatever romantic disaster he had apparently signed with his hands. Instead, he and Lyra were escorted into a vast chamber suspended inside a hollow crystal tower, where the floor floated in separate glowing plates, and the ceiling opened directly into space. Stars burned above them without glass between, yet the air stayed warm and breathable, which Elias decided was either advanced technology or very confident architecture. "Is it safe?" he whispered. Lyra glanced upward. Her long ears tilted slightly, as if listening to the silence between planets. "Perfectly. That's what people say right before the floor disappears. The floor will not disappear." One of the glowing plates drifted beneath Elias' boot and hummed. "Your floor just purred at me." It is reading your weight, pulse, and emotional stability. Oh good, then it's probably requesting emergency backup. Lyra tried not to smile, but failed. The tension in her shoulders softened for the first time since the plaza. Under the silver glow of the chamber, she looked less like a mysterious festival maiden, and more like someone who had been thrown into the center of a storm she had not chosen. Her blue robe shimmered with threads of embedded light, and the delicate silver markings at her temples pulsed faintly whenever she grew nervous. Before Elias could say anything else, the chamber filled with voices. Holographic figures appeared in a circle around them, each projected at life-size from distant worlds. Some wore royal armor, some sat on thrones of black metal, others floated in liquid-filled chambers, their mouths unmoving while machines translated their thoughts. Every one of them looked important, irritated, or both. Lyra went pale. Elias leaned closer. "Friends of yours." "My family," she whispered. "Ah, wonderful. I always like meeting family after accidental engagement crimes." A tall woman appeared at the center of the circle, beautiful and severe, with long ears crowned by thin bands of white gold. Her resemblance to Lyra was unmistakable, though her expression could have frozen lava. "Daughter," she said. Lyra lowered her eyes. "Mother." Elias straightened immediately, then bowed too late, too deeply, and nearly stepped off his floating plate. A guard caught his sleeve. "Human dignity preserved," the translator drone announced. "No, it wasn't," Elias muttered. The queen's eyes moved to him. "You are the outsider who returned the heart ornament. I am the outsider who picked up lost jewelry before checking whether it had marriage consequences." A ripple passed through the holographic council. Some faces hardened. Others looked amused despite themselves. Lyra's mother did not laugh. "Do you understand what has happened? I understand that your festival needs warning signs." Lyra made a tiny sound that might have been panic or laughter. The eldest festival official stepped forward, his crystal staff glowing with recorded memory. Above them, the scene from the plaza appeared again. Lyra stumbling, the ornament falling, Elias lifting it with simple concern, the moment their hands touched. The image rotated slowly beneath the stars. "The first condition was fulfilled by kindness," the elder declared. "The second by public witness. The third by unbroken contact." Elias stared at the hologram. "My fingers touched hers for 2 seconds. 3.4, corrected the drone. "Traitor." Then another hologram opened, showing news broadcasts already spreading across trade moons and orbital cities. Elias saw his own confused face beneath glowing headlines in languages he could not read. One image showed him heroic and handsome. Another made him look like a frightened delivery worker. "I prefer that channel," he said, pointing at the heroic one. Lyra finally laughed, soft but real. The sound crossed the chamber like a small act of rebellion. Her mother noticed. Her severe expression shifted, not gently, but enough for Elias to see something hidden beneath the royal mask. Concern. "You attended in disguise," the queen said to Lyra. "You carried the heart ornament alone." "I wanted one night without guards choosing every breath for me," Lyra replied, "and instead you chose a human." Lyra lifted her chin. Her long ears trembled, but her voice held. "He helped me when everyone else only watched." Silence followed. Elias, who had never felt less qualified to represent his species, raised one hand. "For the record, humans are excellent at picking things up. It's one of our oldest technologies." This time, even one of the armored nobles laughed before disguising it as a cough. The queen studied him for a long moment. Beyond the open ceiling, a starship crossed the darkness, its engines leaving blue fire across the void. "This matter can no longer remain a festival accident," she said. "By dawn, every royal house in this sector will demand judgment." Elias looked at Lyra, then at the circle of powerful faces. "I really should have stayed near the souvenir stands," he said. Lyra's smile was faint, worried, and strangely warm. "Too late," she whispered. "Now you are the souvenir." The royal discussion lasted long enough for Elias to understand 2 things. First, The galaxy had many laws about love. Second, almost all of them sounded like they had been written by people who had never survived a normal conversation. By the time the holographic council faded, the stars above the Hall of Eternal Witnesses had shifted into a colder pattern, and Lyra looked as if she had been standing beneath their weight for years. They were allowed 1 hour before the next hearing. 1 hour, according to the guards, for reflection. Elias suspected it was really 1 hour for the nobles to sharpen their opinions and polish their dramatic entrances. Lyra led him away from the crystal tower through a quiet passage of floating glass. Outside, the festival still lived below them, bright and enormous. Music rose from the streets. Lantern drones drifted between towers like lazy fireflies. Somewhere a vendor shouted about roasted moonfruit with only mild hallucinations, which Elias found disturbingly honest. "I am sorry," Lyra said. "You've apologized 6 times. I ruined your visit. I once missed a connecting shuttle because a customs machine believed my socks were biological weapons. This is still top 3, but not first." She laughed, then quickly looked away as if laughter had become a dangerous political act. Her long ears folded slightly back, graceful and nervous. Without the crowd, without the officials, she seemed younger, not childish, but tired of being watched. They reached a balcony overlooking the 7 moons. Each artificial sphere turned slowly, projecting rivers of color across the clouds of Orava below. The gas giant storms glowed like sleeping beasts under the floating city. "I carried the heart ornament because I thought no one would know me here," Lyra said. "For one evening, I wanted to be no one important." Elias leaned on the railing. "No offense, but disguising yourself as a mysterious, beautiful woman carrying sacred jewelry at a famous ceremony might not have been the lowest profile plan." Her mouth twitched. "I see that now. On Earth, we usually start with sunglasses. I will remember this advanced human tactic." The humor faded gently between them. Lyra looked down at the festival plaza where their accident had begun. "Every noble who approaches me sees a throne, an alliance, a treaty. No one sees me drop things because my hands are shaking. I saw that part very clearly." "Yes," she said softly, "and you did not laugh." "I considered it, but the ground object seemed expensive." She smiled again, but this time it lingered. Elias felt the strangeness of it then, not the ritual, not the royal panic, not even the fact that the woman beside him was from another world. The strange part was how ordinary the quiet felt with her, as if 2 people could stand above a gas giant and still find something familiar in embarrassment. A small service drone floated near them, carrying cups of blue liquid. "Refreshment?" it asked. Elias eyed the glowing drink. "Will this make me see my ancestors?" "Only if consumed in groups of 9. I'll take 1." Lyra accepted a cup too, and for a while they watched the festival in silence. Below, children chased gravity bubbles through the street. Musicians played instruments made of light. Couples tied silver ribbons to memory trees, each ribbon storing a promise in microscopic crystal. Elias glanced at her. "What happens if I refuse all this? The ceremony, the bond, everything." Lyra's fingers tightened around her cup. "The council can dissolve it if both of us ask. It would shame my house, but it would free you." "And you?" She took a breath. "I would return to being useful." The answer bothered him more than it should have. "I don't want you trapped because I picked up jewelry," he said, "and I do not want you punished because you were kind." Their eyes met. Her ears lifted slightly, catching the moonlight, and the silver markings near her temples shimmered like tiny constellations. Then his translator drone, silent until now, beeped, emotional compatibility rising. Elias turned slowly. "You are banned from romance." Lyra covered her mouth, laughing so hard she nearly spilled the blue drink. For the first time since he had met her, the fear around her seemed to crack. From far below, the festival bells began to ring, announcing midnight. Above them, 7 moons aligned in a perfect arc, bathing the balcony in silver fire. Lyra looked at Elias, still smiling, but there was something braver in her face now. When the council asks tomorrow, she said, I will not hide behind tradition. What will you say? That fate may have made the first mistake, she said, but I am beginning to think it has excellent taste. Elias stared at her, then raised his cup. To terrifyingly competent fate. She touched her cup to his, and to humans who should read warning signs. Bold of you to assume I read signs on Earth. By morning, Elias had become the most famous confused tourist in 3 sectors. His face floated above news towers, food stalls, and even the restroom doors, where a cheerful hologram declared, "This facility honors the chosen human." Elias stared at it for 5 full seconds before whispering, I am never telling Earth about this part. Lyra found him near the Hall of Eternal Witnesses, dressed again in her blue festival robe, though now 2 royal guards followed her like polished shadows. Her long ears were decorated with thin silver chains, and the markings near her temples glowed faintly under the artificial dawn. You look serious, Elias said. You look like you fought your breakfast. It had legs. It was bread. It ran from me. Before Lyra could answer, a low thunder rolled above the floating city. Not weather. Ships. Dozens of noble vessels descended through the violet clouds of Orava, their hulls shaped like blades, crowns, and sleeping beasts. The rival royal families had arrived. The council chamber filled quickly. Holographic banners unfolded in the air, each representing an ancient house. Some nobles looked at Elias with curiosity. Others watched him as if a human tourist had personally insulted evolution. A lord in black armor stepped forward first. His long white hair floated around him in a private gravity field. This ceremony must be declared invalid. The human is not of noble blood. Elias raised his hand. For balance, my grandfather did win a chili contest in Nebraska. The translator drone hummed. Cultural prestige unclear. Several younger nobles snickered. The lord did not. Another noblewoman argued that humans were too unpredictable. A historian countered by activating a memory crystal, revealing forgotten records from centuries earlier. Images formed above the chamber. Ancient couples from different species, joined not by power but by acts of courage, mercy, and accident. The heart custom, the historian declared, was never created for bloodlines. It was created to honor sincerity when politics failed. A murmur passed through the room. Then came the witnesses. The bowl vendor testified first, still offended that Elias had refused the smiling food. The human showed caution, the vendor said, a wise trait in a species that eats with its mouth. That feels like an insult wearing a compliment costume, Elias whispered. Children from the festival spoke next, claiming Elias had bowed to a parade statue, apologized to a trash drone, and helped an elderly gas being cross a magnetic bridge. None of these acts were heroic, but together they painted a strange picture of a man who kept being polite in places where no one expected politeness. Lyra listened silently, her eyes shining more with surprise than embarrassment. The black-armored lord grew impatient. Kindness is not qualification. No, Lyra said suddenly. Every voice stopped. She stepped forward, blue robe flowing like captured starlight, her long ears lifted, no longer trembling. Kindness is the first qualification my world forgot. The chamber became still. Elias looked at her and felt something in his chest tighten, not fear this time, but wonder. The Lord's jaw hardened. You would defend a stranger over your own order. Lyra glanced at Elias. A small smile touched her mouth. He is not as strange as he appears. That is the nicest insult I've ever received, Elias said. Even the queen, watching from her elevated seat, lowered her gaze to hide the faintest smile. Outside, crowds gathered across the festival city, watching the hearing on enormous sky screens. Elias saw ordinary visitors cheering each time another witness confirmed the ritual. Someone had already made tiny dolls of him holding the heart ornament. One doll screamed when squeezed. I hate how accurate that is, he muttered. At last, the historian raised the glowing memory crystal. By law, The ceremony stands unless both chosen voices reject it before the final moonset. All attention turned to Elias and Lyra. The political weight in the chamber became almost physical, heavier than the gravity plates beneath their feet. Elias understood then that this was no longer only about an accident. It was about whether old power would allow one honest moment to matter. Lyra's fingers brushed his sleeve, barely touching. Elias swallowed. "Well," he said softly, "I suppose I should stop pretending I only came here for souvenirs." The final hearing began beneath the open stars, where the Hall of Eternal Witnesses had widened itself into an arena of floating crystal. Thousands gathered on luminous platforms around the central circle, while millions more watched through sky screens across the festival city. Elias stood beside Lyra and tried not to look like a man who had accidentally become a diplomatic incident with shoes. The 7 artificial moons hung above them in perfect alignment. Their light poured down in silver columns, feeding ancient machines buried beneath the floor. Holograms of past ceremonies appeared and faded like ghosts made of starlight. The black-armored lord stepped forward one last time. "Let the human speak. Does he accept a bond he does not understand?" Elias felt every eye turn toward him. Lyra's long ears trembled slightly, though her face remained calm. She looked human in almost every way, but the silver markings near her temples glowed like tiny galaxies under her skin. Elias took a breath. "I don't understand your laws. I don't understand your rituals. Yesterday I thought a moon spoon had ruined my vacation." A ripple of laughter softened the arena. "But I understand this," he continued. "Lyra should not be trapped by politics, tradition, or a confused man with dangerous levels of politeness." Lyra turned toward him. "If she wants this ended," Elias said, "then I ask the council to end it. No shame, no punishment, no royal shouting unless your culture really enjoys that." Even a few guards smiled. Silence followed. It was not cold silence this time, but waiting silence. Then Lyra stepped forward. "My whole life," she said, her voice carrying through the crystal arena, "others have spoken first for my blood, my house, my future. Yesterday, a stranger saw me drop something and helped me without knowing my name." She looked at Elias, and the silver beneath her skin brightened. "Tradition opened the door," she said, "but I choose whether to walk through it." The queen leaned forward from her throne. Lyra lifted her chin. "I do not reject him." The arena exploded into sound. Some cheered, some shouted. Somewhere Elias heard a food vendor yelling that celebration bread was half price and mostly obedient. The black-armored lord's expression twisted. "This is sentiment." The queen rose. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade of light. "No, this is testimony." One by one, the ancient machines beneath the floor awakened. The heart ornament floated from Lyra's hands, spinning between her and Elias. Its white metal unfolded into rings of light, scanning their faces, their pulse, their voices, perhaps even the nervous dignity Elias was desperately trying to keep alive. The translator drone beeped. "Compatibility confirmed." Elias pointed at it. "We are having a serious moment. Apologies, romantic statistics suppressed." Lyra laughed, and the arena laughed with her. The queen descended from her throne and stood before Elias. For one terrifying second he thought she might challenge him to a duel, adopt him, or tax him. Instead, she placed one hand over her heart. "Human Elias Ward," she said, "you offered freedom before reward. That is rarer in royal courts than victory." Elias bowed carefully this time. "I practice not falling." Successful. The 7 moons brightened. Their beams joined above the arena, forming a bridge of silver fire across the sky. Lyra reached for Elias' hand, not because the law demanded it, but because she wanted to. He took it. The crowd's roar rose into the stars, shaking banners, towers, and the floating city itself. Elias leaned toward her and whispered, "For the record, next vacation I'm choosing somewhere boring." Lyra smiled. "Then I will come with you. That makes it legally less boring." Above them, the heart ornament pulsed once, as if the ancient galaxy itself had laughed. By the last night of the Festival of Seven Moons, the floating city no longer whispered about scandal. It sang about it. Every bridge, tower, and transparent street shimmered with silver ribbons, and the storms of Orava rolled beneath the city like oceans of violet fire. Starships gathered in orbit, their engines forming constellations that had not existed the day before. What had begun as one confused human picking up one glowing ornament had become a celebration large enough to make historians nervous and souvenir sellers extremely wealthy. Elias stood beside Lyra at the edge of the central plaza, watching a tiny mechanical doll of himself run in circles while screaming, "I only came to watch." "I hate that it sounds like me," he said. Lyra's long ears lifted with amusement. In the moonlight she looked almost human, except for those elegant ears and the silver markings glowing softly at her temples. "It is very accurate. I have become merchandise. You have become tradition. That sounds worse." She laughed, and this time no one tried to silence it. The rival nobles had already departed, though not before several publicly accepted the council's ruling. The black-armored lord left with the expression of a man who had swallowed a treaty and found it undercooked. Lyra's mother, the queen, remained. She had spoken to her daughter not as a ruler before witnesses, but as a mother in a quiet garden of floating lanterns. Elias had not heard every word, but he saw Lyra return with tears in her eyes and peace in her face. Later, the queen approached Elias alone. "Take care of her," she said. Elias straightened. "I will. And learn our customs before touching sacred objects. I am considering gloves." For the first time the queen truly smiled. Wise. When the final ceremony began, there were no chains of law, no forced promises, no frightened confusion. Lyra placed the heart ornament between them, and its white metal opened like a small mechanical flower. Around them, beings from 100 worlds grew silent. Elias remembered arriving as a tourist, hiding behind jokes, afraid of belonging anywhere too deeply. Now he looked at Lyra and understood that the galaxy had not trapped him. It had asked him to be braver than watching from the edge. "I came here to observe," he said softly. "I know," Lyra replied. "I think I'm done only observing." She took his hand. Above them, the 7 moons aligned one final time, casting a river of light across the plaza. The heart ornament rose into the air, recording not an accident this time, but a choice. Cheers erupted from the crowd, warm and endless, while ships in orbit painted the sky with blue fire. Elias leaned close to Lyra. "Next festival we read the guidebook first." She smiled. "Together." And beneath the impossible moons, with a laughing crowd around them and a gas giant turning below, Elias finally stopped feeling like a visitor lost among the stars. He had found a place, a future, and a woman who had chosen him twice, once by ancient mistake and once by her own heart.